A new coronavirus vaccine could be in American arms as soon as early next month. Johnson & Johnson has applied for an emergency use authorization from the FDA. Unlike other vaccines on the market, this one requires only a single dose and does not need to be stored in ultra cold temperatures. Now, the drug maker says it provides, quote, complete protection against COVID-related hospitalization and death as of day 28. If it gets the green light, we could see 100 million doses shipped out in the first half of the year. So I want to bring in Dr. Bob Lahita. He's a professor of medicine at the New York Medical College and chairman of medicine at St. Joseph University Hospital. Thank you, Dr. Bob. All right, so this news comes as the U.S. faces another potential surge in cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. We're seeing highly infectious variants of the virus spreading across the country. What do we know about the Johnson & Johnson's vaccine's efficacy against these new different strains?
Well, the efficacy against the strains, Anne-Marie, is supposed to be pretty good from what I've heard. The British strain certainly is very responsive to the J&J vaccine. The J&J vaccine is about 66% efficacious, meaning its potency is about 66%. But in the elder population, it's above 80%. So that's pretty interesting. And you see on your screen, it says 72% in the United States. And the data are evolving with regard to its efficacy. But particularly against the variants, I am told that the variants respond. And secondly, that the transmission is eliminated, or not totally eliminated, but significantly decreased with this particular vaccine from J&J. And this is a viral vector vaccine, which is a little different, using an adenovirus that's harmless to carry the genes of the virus into your cells and make you immune.
So do we know how other vaccines, Dr. Bob, like the AstraZeneca Oxford University shot, is at combating these variants?
Yes, that is supposed to be as efficacious. And just this morning, I saw a report where emergency use authorization is being requested for the AstraZeneca vaccine. So both of these vaccines may be approved by the beginning of next month by the FDA. And they are supposedly efficacious insofar as when you get these vaccines, even if you get the variant, and you know, the difference between the variant and the regular coronavirus that we're used to from spring and summer is that the structure of the spike protein changes so that the antibody doesn't necessarily stick as terrific. This is the vaccine antibody I'm talking about, doesn't stick to this spike protein as we would like it to. But the patients who have gotten sick during the clinical trial with the variant have done really well and have not been dreadfully ill. They just had something like a flu-like condition, something that anyone could endure and would keep you out of the hospital. So that's a lot of good news.
So, you know, the U.S. has been kind of really relying on encouraging individuals to wear masks, social distancing, and, of course, ramping up vaccine efforts to curb the infections from these new variants. Other countries around the world have chosen to also implement lockdowns. We saw that in the UK. As everyone knows, I have family in Canada. We saw that in Ontario, where they've just gone through a very severe lockdown. I think they're still through it. I guess I want to ask you, I go back and forth as to whether or not these lockdowns work, because often it seems like there's a lockdown, then the lockdown is lifted, and then shortly after that there's another spike in the requirement for another lockdown. You know, what's your take on these two different approaches? You know, encouraging people to social distance and wear their masks and trying to get the vaccine out versus locking people down.
I don't think, Anne-Marie, that the lockdown is particularly efficient, at least what I've seen. I think wearing a mask, washing your hands, and socially distancing is the best way to go. I think lockdowns do nothing but demoralize people, make them resistant, fatigued, do not allow, for example, for dining indoors, don't allow for shopping indoors, and of course, movie theaters, which is another big item that's being addressed as we speak. So I think the lockdowns are a bit draconian. People are tired of it. They would much prefer to mandate wear a mask and to socially distance and wash their hands, as we do in the hospital it seems every 5 minutes I'm washing my hands. So this is really, really the way to go.
So let me ask this, Dr. Bob. You often hear stories from people who have contracted the virus, and they say, I've been doing everything right. I've been wearing a mask. I've been keeping 6 feet apart. And the reason I want to ask you, Dr. Bob, is because you're a doctor. And oftentimes, all of us go to the doctor, and when you ask us a series of questions, how many drinks a week do you have? We always fudge the numbers a little. It sounds like
social.
Yeah, it's like, I'm a social drinker. That's just one example of the lies that we tell ourselves, and we also tell our doctors while you're basically looking at our charts and looking at us and going, okay, it can't be what you're telling me because the numbers don't lie. So here's my question. When people do contract the virus, do you think, because you just said that the lockdowns you don't think are efficient, so it's got to be that people aren't being as safe as they think that they are. In other words, they say, I'm only in my bubble, but we don't know how big the bubble is. They say, I wear a mask, but maybe they go to the gym or they go into places where there is more of a risk of contracting the virus. I'm trying to understand when you hear about somebody saying, I don't know how I got it because I only come to work and go home, why that might not be necessarily accurate.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head. And let me say that you're absolutely right. I've heard from older people who have contracted the virus that say, I didn't leave the house. I've been there. Well, what did you do? Well, I've had deliveries of fruit and vegetables, and I had a couple of boxes from Amazon, etc. So I admire the kindergarten teacher somewhere in the country that I heard used a lesson for her children in class by using glitter. And she took the glitter and showed how fast the glitter, and we all know what glitter is, and it gets into everything, how fast it spread around the class from child to child. That's exactly how this virus spreads. I suggested to somebody on our staff that we use pink powder and show you how quickly a little dollop of powder, when taken into your home, would spread throughout your house. That's exactly how the virus spreads. And you have to, at one point I said last summer, you have to consider it like it's radioactivity. This virus can be everywhere. Remember, a virus is only seen with an electron microscope. It's so small, but it's so aerosolized and so easy to get. And it sticks in your nose, your mouth, and goes into your lungs, in your eyes with these receptors. So it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere when you're in its presence. So you really have to be careful. That's why wearing the mask is so important and washing your hands is important. Think of it as glitter that's everywhere.
That's a great way. That is a great example, because we all know you'll see a piece of glitter like 6 months later. Obviously, the virus can't survive that much, but you're like, how did that end up on my face? Anyway,
for my club days.
I want to ask you actually about. Right, that's right, you raver, you. I want to ask you about another story that Politico is reporting on. It's really disturbing. Apparently, the president's COVID response team is trying to locate upwards of 20 million missing doses of vaccine. How on earth do doses go missing? Walk us through the process. What happens when a shipment arrives at a hospital, and how are these vaccines tracked?
Okay, so the first thing happens is that there's a federal storage facility. The vaccines go from state to state. So you get an allotment of, say, 1,000 doses for round numbers. That 1,000 doses currently is frozen because, remember, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines have to be kept below 70 degrees, pretty much. And so they're kept in a locked facility, presumptively in the hospital, usually guarded if you're in a big facility like a mega administration center. So the vaccines are guarded, and then they're distributed with careful record keeping to individuals. And I've heard recently that when the vaccine is, when everybody that's to be vaccinated for that day is finished, the remainder of the vaccine, which is still frozen, is given to others like prisoners and people who just sort of show up and don't belong into one of those CDC categories, which is good. It's the efficient distribution of the virus. So now we have 20 million doses that have sort of disappeared. And remember, the Pfizer and the Moderna require 2 injections. So a lot of hospitals, a lot of places that administer vaccines are storing the second doses and not giving them out. And that may be responsible for at least 2 to maybe 5 million of those doses. Where the other 15 million went, I have no idea, and neither do you. But they're out there somewhere, and I'm hoping that they haven't been denatured and discarded, because they're extremely valuable at this point.
All right. Dr. Bob Lahita, thank you as always, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vlad.